Released just 1 year after the 16-bit debut of Mega Man X2 came out for the Super Nintendo and was highly anticipated. I have never played it myself, so let's go ahead and take a look and see if Mega Man X2 is as good as its predecessor.
Mega Man X2. Whoa! So a big part of Mega Man X2 is the inclusion of the CX4 chip, developed by Capcom to help perform 3D wireframe scaling and rotation effects to enhance the visuals. Some of these effects are really cool, from the iconic sword mini-boss to the last phase of the Sigma boss fight. I do like how this game visually surpasses the original, and more than just the wireframe bosses. The sprite work and characters and enemies look more detailed as well. Bosses, or Mavericks, look very complex. None of the enemies from Mega Man X return in this game, and what I think is a bold statement of the developers at Capcom wanting to continue to branch out the Mega Man X series. Well, except these cute little bats. Ow! Zero returns here as well, but with a much grander redesign that looks closer to his official art, long hair and all. And Zero plays a vital role in the story of Mega Man X2 as well. Set just 6 months after the events of the first game, Mega Man X leads the Maverick Hunters, a group set out to stop the Mavericks from causing chaos. The intro sequence is yet another classic stage to set the tone for Mega Man X2. While the intro stage for X1 featured an attack you were repelling, in this game, X and the Mavericks are on the offensive. Mega Man X is a much stronger character than his humble beginnings in the first game, and he is feared by the Mavericks. The boss in this stage is just massive, probably the largest boss we've seen yet in this series, and X just takes him out so quickly and so easily. And would you believe it, we have some great story cutscenes here too. 3 shadowy Mavericks discuss how they cannot underestimate Mega Man X and that they need to tread carefully. Wonder who those people are. It's interesting to see how much X has been fighting within the 6-month time span to really be a real threat to the Mavericks. His growth and power is just fun to see in such a small moment in the game before we really sink into the meat of this one. The structure of Mega Man X2 takes things a bit above the previous game in a pretty interesting way. After you defeat a few Mavericks, while you're selecting your stage, you will see these 3 new Mavericks we saw earlier pop into various stages in the game. There, if you find a secret boss room in each stage when they are present, you can fight them. And if you do, you get awarded a piece of Zero's body.
Now, I didn't really figure this system out until I was kind of too far along in the game, because my thought process was I will just fight the regular Mavericks and then go fight those mini-bosses before we beat the game. However, those bosses, they cycle which rooms they will appear in, and they only appear in stages that you have not completed yet. So if you get too far in just doing the regular Mavericks, you will miss out. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. If you don't get the Zero parts, you can still finish the game. You'll just have an extra boss that you have to fight at the end. I wonder who that is. And, you know, I think it's a kind of more interesting story beat because you get to see how X really cares about Zero, and it kind of motivates him even more to approach the final part of the game, knowing that his friend is basically in, captivity with these bad guys. So I kind of like not getting the Zero parts looking back.
The order in which you play the stages is really up to you. There's no cause and effect aspects of one stage changing another stage like Mega Man X1 had, which is a bit disappointing, but I can understand given the structure of the optional Maverick fights to get Zero parts being here instead. As this was my first time playing the game, I just looked up a general boss weakness guide to go through just as a suggestion. But after I finished the game, it looks like you can really do them in any order once you figure out how they work. The bosses themselves are not that difficult, but some of them did give me some trouble. Mega Man X2 still keeps a great variety of stages, from jungles to mountains, water stages and factories, mines, and even moving trains. The stages in Mega Man X2 feel longer with more open areas to navigate, and they really incentivize exploration and discovery. This one is great for one of the biggest upgrades Mega Man X2 has, the new dash boots. Not only do you start the game with the ability to dash, but through armor upgrades you will get the ability to dash in mid-air. If I could define Mega Man X2 in a single idea, it is that Capcom really pushed the limits for what a Mega Man X game could be, especially in relation to its increased movement options. The stages complement your swift movement and even reward highly skilled players with secrets and upgrades. The arm parts give what I think is the best Buster upgrade I've seen yet. the ability to do 2 charged shots. With the second one, you time when you want to use it. This gives the player yet another option when playing, which I just love. This versatility in combat and how you approach the game. This of course also lets you charge up any of the enemy weapons you get too. Unfortunately, the 2 other armor parts are kind of weak in my opinion. The body parts make it so when you take damage, you fill up a meter, and when full, can unleash Giga Crush, a screen-type clearing move. Frankly, I found not really any good spots in the game that I would want to use this in, and it doesn't even do a lot of damage to the bosses, except one phase of one boss. There's also the head parts, which give us a scanner ability, kind of like Scan Pulse in the Metroid series, but really, whoever uses this? There's a few spots that you would need to use it to find secrets, but in a fast-paced action game like Mega Man, I think the concept is a bit lost here. No one wants to stop and scan every inch of the stage, especially in one that really incentivizes you to move fast. Also, why does Dr. Light call you by your full government name Mega Man X? He was just X in the first game, why so formal here? Sometimes he's Mega Man, sometimes he's Mega Man X, sometimes he's X. What's his name? The Mavericks and their stages in Mega Man X2 have a great variety in their design. They all keep up with the animal motif we saw in Mega Man X1. Here we have characters like Magma Centipede, Overdrive Ostrich, and Wire Sponge. Take Wheel Gator for example. He's an alligator who lives on a train and wears a cowboy hat and fights those pesky turtles. Oh wait, sorry, wrong gator. Or Bubble Crab. Bubble Crab might be my favorite for how his design looks as well as his in-game sprite. The Maverick fights themselves take things a step further by often not being contained in a single screen box. Fights like Flame Stag and Morph Moth, lordy, have a lot of vertical space they utilize and will even go off screen while you have to wait at the bottom for them to reach you. Now I really know how they feel when I do that. And each fight is not too hard on their own once you learn their patterns and weaknesses. Some of them are a bit too easy, most notably Overdrive Ostrich, who you can stun lock very similar to Mega Man X1's Spark Mandrill. My biggest takeaway from the stages in Mega Man X2 are that they feel so much longer. Given the randomness of where the 3 main Mavericks can appear, each stage has a dedicated separate boss room specifically for them, and the stages have larger areas that lead up to that segment. A lot of times you'll be progressing through a level and will end up in one of these empty boss rooms and not actually where the level intended you to go to finish it normally. This leads to an emphasis of exploration for possibly the largest scale Mega Man game to date. Bubble Crab stage I think is a great example of this, where the majority of the stage is underwater, and you are at the center of this vast ocean with so many different ways to go. The stage has a submarine mini-boss that acts as a guide for the player to show them where they're supposed to go. The sub moves very slowly, so you can take some time to explore nearby areas while you wait for it to advance. And can we talk about the first shot, the first screen on this stage? The depth of that background art, coupled with the sprite work and amazing detail on these cave walls, this game really is just amazing to look at. Other stages in the game really utilize the sheer scope and length of the levels. Overdrive Ostrich is the only stage that lets you ride the hover bikes that you see in the intro of the game, and a lot of this stage is just riding through the desert, so it makes it feel like a shorter stage despite probably being the longest stage in the game. Your abilities really get pushed to the limit in stages like Flame Stags, where you have to wall jump quickly inside a volcano to avoid its erupting lava. There's many moments like this in Mega Man X2 that feel almost like a sheer jump in difficulty and the need for precise platforming, but only just for a moment. I get the feeling that X2 is really made as a challenge for the superfans of Mega Man. The sheer emphasis of player movement and ability all throughout this game cements that. Crystal Snail stage I think is beautiful, but really is just not fun to play. There's a lot of spike traps and ride armor sections to get through, which leads to one of the worst fights I've experienced yet. Crystal Snail can slow down time and charge at you while you are basically helpless. If you don't get his pattern right with his weakness, he can just rush back into his shell and do this move. In a game that so heavily prioritizes and shines in its movement, having a fight where it takes that away from the player just feels bad. My favorite stages in this game were the ones that had a good balance of cool design while doing something very unique. Wheel Gator's expansive moving train with multiple paths, Bubble Crab's vast ocean that shows the depth of your exploration, Magma Centipede's fortress with a minor stealth focus and interesting sub-bosses to really challenge your combat abilities, and Morphmoth's heavily detailed robot scrapyard with interesting lore implications. Crystal Snail stage just sucks, and the vertical climbs and Flame Stag stage just made me want to end it all in that lava in the volcano. Overdrive Ostrich and Wire Sponges stages are pretty alright on their own. All 8 stages altogether, though, really do shine in their differences, and no 2 stages are alike, despite 2 of these Mavericks having fire motifs. Out of the enemy abilities in the game, there's a couple that I think are a little broken just because of how the game is designed. When you get the Buster upgrade and you can charge up enemy attacks, the Flame Charge gives you an additional air dash, which is very useful. The most broken weapon in this game is probably the Sonic Slicer, solely because when you fire it, it can bounce off walls and ceilings a number of times. This makes a lot of fights that are in those closed boxes a little bit easier, where you can just spam some Sonic Slicers and then lock in the focus on that movement and dodging while your Slicers do all the work. In concept, I really liked Wire Sponge's grappling hook, but with 2 air dashes, I rarely needed this. And the Silk Shot ability can suck up a lot of health tanks. I don't really understand how this works or why this works in some rooms, but it makes it easy to fill up E-tank, so that's neat. Once all the Mavericks are defeated, X learns that the enemy has Zero's parts, and he has to go get them back, since I didn't do that earlier. The final stages of the game is at the base at the North Pole. The first 3 stages take us to fight the main antagonists, Surges, Agile, and Violin, all while testing our platforming abilities even further. Stage 1 has another vertical climb that really tests your wall jumping speed. Stage 2 has arguably the most ridiculous platforming sequence involving these moving platforms you have to wall dash on while dodging spikes, and flames that just knock you off? Like, what the heck? The third stage of the game is legendary because it has a secret upgrade capsule we have to get, and getting this one is a real doozy. First, there's a section with a platform you have to jump on to move it up with you while you're trying to not fall in the spikes or get hit by the enemies that just keep respawning when you barely move outside their spawn point. After that, getting through all that, there's a second part where you have to guide a bat all the way to this ladder and freeze it with the Crystal Snail's ability. Make sure you grab the 1-up here. And then you have this gap you have to get through, which you can do by either damage boosting or just dashing with the Speed Burner ability. Then you have to damage boost over this bullshit spike gap to get to this jump. When you fail, not if, but when, you spawn back at the Bat Ladder section. This 1-up here saved my life so I could constantly practice this jump. Once you clear it, you have to be at full health, so use a sub-tank if you aren't. And then you slide down this wall until you reach the room with the hidden capsule. You speak the Dr. Light, and he does a Wayne's World reference?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
But once that is done, you get yet another Street Fighter move, the Shoryuken. This one also one-hit kills bosses, and it's pretty good, but you also have to do the input for Shoryuken, and I don't play fighting games. I can't do that. But to think, the journey we had to do to get here, at the end of the game, like, this is so much insane platforming to do. It's just the cherry on top of Capcom, again, pushing the limits of what Mega Man X can be. Once we finish this stage, the 4th final stage has this... Oh no. I can't believe it. A Maverick refight room? Mega Man X perfected this by spreading the refights out throughout the levels. Why go back to such a weird, archaic version of just boss fight after boss fight? With a game with this much content in it, they really don't need to bring back the Maverick refights at all, yet here we are. Defeating all the Mavericks again hits us with a revelation. Sigma is still alive, and he taunts you for the final confrontation. The last stage of the game strangely takes you back to Magma Centipede's house. Kinda weird. But soon you get to fight Sigma, but actually, it's Zero. Now this happens if you fail to get all the Zero parts. You have to actually fight Zero, and this fight is really hard. The Speed Burner does great damage, and moving as little as possible helps keep Zero under control. If you're able to save Zero by getting all the parts beforehand, you get to skip this fight entirely. With Zero back, he directs you to face Sigma. From here, Sigma has some Wolverine claws, and he can really bully you. Movement is key, as well as using the Sonic Slicer ability, because it can bounce around the room and knock off walls, and it does great damage without you really having to aim. Broken ability in this game. After this, it's time for his final form, using the power of the CX4 chip for a 3D floating head. He spawns a lot of default enemies that can refill your health during this fight, and honestly, it's pretty cool. The head changes color as you do more damage and he gets faster and faster, and I think it's a really fun fight that also shows the technical marvel that they were able to do on the Super Nintendo. Once you defeat him, the game is over, and you and Zero get to properly reunite with a rather long credit sequence, with X contemplating if robots and humans could ever live together peacefully. It amazes me that such a game could be released just 1 year after the first Mega Man X. Mega Man X2 still keeps the series in a high quality with great level design, great Mavericks, amazing visuals, and versatile movement and combat options. It does have its moments of weaknesses to me, with pushing the limits of the player for some really outrageous ways to navigate secrets in the later stages, but all within the confines of what is possible in the game. I think about examples like the health upgrade in Crystal Snail stage with this leap of faith using the mech suit, moments of the game where you have to use Wheelgator's ability to clear areas that the game wanted you to use Scan Pulse on that have no visual indicator. Like, who would even think to use Scan Pulse on every single frame of this game? I think it's a bit much to ask. And the absolute insane gauntlet to reach the Shoryuken, just to name a few of the stretches of what knowledge you need to play the game fully. It is a game that gets better when you know where everything is. But sometimes in that discovery, it would have taken ages to figure some of this stuff out. I feel like X2 is not very new user-friendly. Something that I think I do value in Mega Man X is that you can pick up that game and play a lot of it and still have a great time. If you're trying to 100% it, I agree, you're not going to know where everything is. But some of the stuff in this game really stretch what you can do, and you have to be very creative to find a bunch of secrets. Some I would argue is very either trial and error or just using a guide, frankly. Another aspect that feels off of X2 to me is its soundtrack. Now, the soundtrack is still fantastic, don't get me wrong, but to me, for a Mega Man X game, this soundtrack lacks that extra adrenaline-filled punch the first game had. Some of these tracks have it, but for a game that was entirely one person who did the music here, some tracks just hit better than others. None of them, though, make me feel unstoppable like X is supposed to be in this game. Now, different isn't always bad, but not a ton of these songs really stick with me. Potentially I'm biased because Mega Man X1 is such an iconic game for me personally, but I don't really see myself revisiting a lot of these tracks here. I think that so much of this game still kicks ass. I love the increased level of presentation this game has, from a graphical standpoint, from the 3D wire effect standpoint, but also just the setting and tone, the way it presents cutscenes, context for story, characters interacting with each other. I feel like in this game, X has more character, more things to say, and I love seeing that. There are definitely elements here that do make this a true sequel of the game. If you want to play Mega Man X2 today, you have a few options. You can get the original Super Nintendo cartridge. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Mega Man X2 has always been kind of pricey, or just straight up hard to find. When I first got into game collecting so many years ago, I really wanted to get the Mega Man X games all physically, and this kind of stopped me because it was just hard to find and too expensive. So if you really want to play it today, I think the best bet you have is the Mega Man X Legacy Collection. Technically speaking, you can import the Super Famicom version for a much cheaper price point if you want to have that feel of playing on an original cartridge, but I really prefer collecting games in my region, so I don't do that. But you could do that. And if you already have Mega Man X2 on Super Nintendo, you could give it to me. That'd be super.
Overall for me, Mega Man X2 is not quite as high as Mega Man X in my tier list ranking. It matches it in almost every way, but the increased difficulty in certain sections and the lesser soundtrack, coupled with some secrets that I think are rather ridiculous to find, firmly puts it to me in A tier. It's still a fantastic, phenomenal game. I do see myself revisiting this one from time to time, because I do think at the end of the day, Mega Man X2 is a game that definitely rewards its more experienced players and challenges versus a first-time play like this. I'll probably fall in love with this game more the next time I play it.
And that is Mega Man X2, a very highly deserved sequel that I think is fantastic. But what did you think? Let me know in the comments below, and until next time, take care.
A fun fact about the legacy of this game: in an interview, the mangaka who writes My Hero Academia revealed that one of the reasons he got into being a manga artist was because he liked Mega Man X2, and one of his classmates complimented a drawing he did of Crystal Snail. You have this guy to thank for My Hero Academia.